everyone, welcome to Thorough Newspaper Analysis, which is presented to you by LawSikho. So today we will be discussing two articles. Both are again from the Indian Express. The first article is titled as 5 years after Paris. So basically, this talks about the 5 years that we have completed from the Paris Agreement as it was brought in 2015. So how far have we been able to achieve the targets that were set in 2015 Paris Agreement, and what are the steps and things that we need to take in care of? Will be discussed in this article. And second, again, we have it from the Indian Express, which is titled as Declare Exotic Pets, Avoid Prosecution, How One-Time Scheme Works. Basically, this article talks about the very illegal trade that happens in the exotic animals, but still the government is willing to give a chance to all the people who have been dealing in the exotic pets, and how they can actually save themselves from any kind of prosecution or legal action if at all they tell about their possession of these animals to the government. So what is the entire procedure and the other things attached to it will be discussed in this article. And thirdly, we have the news and flash column. So if you're also preparing for judicial services examination, you can definitely look at the Lord of the Courses, which is Judiciary Test Prep course from LawSikho. The link to this course is available in the description box below. And also the PDF of this discussion will be available on our Telegram group, the link to which is again there in the description box. Also, if in case you have any specific query related to the newspaper analysis or anything regarding the news that we discuss in here, then also you can put up your query in our Telegram group. We'll definitely make an effort to give you the right, discussion about that. With this, let's see what is the multiple choice question from yesterday's discussion. UN Population Award 2020 has recently been awarded to first, Help Age India, second, Reliance Foundation, third, Red Cross Society India, or fourth, UNICEF India. You can write down your answer in the comment section below. This is the descriptive question from today's discussion that will follow. What steps should be taken to reduce the levels of greenhouse gases emissions? So you can tell them at the Indian level as well, at the national one, and at the global level too. So the 2015 Paris Agreement. So this is the 5th anniversary of 2015 Paris Agreement, since this is the year 2020. So we are celebrating 5 years to the Paris Agreement. The Climate Ambition Summit is being co-hosted by the UK, France, and United Nations today. So what is happening is that since we have completed 5 years to the Paris Agreement, and a lot of countries are members of the Paris Agreement, so to discuss upon the development that has been made in the last 5 years and what steps that do we need to take in the future for meeting the objectives and aims of the Paris Agreement, the Climate Ambition Summit is going on, and it is being co-hosted by UK, France, and United Nations. So you should keep it in mind as to which all are responsible, or which all entities or members are there that are participating or co-hosting the Climate Ambition Summit. So it is UK, France, and United Nations. So it is going on, taking place today. So let's see that what is the current situation in the climate action. Basically, the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are at record levels. So the lockdowns only resulted in a temporary 4.2 to 7.5% reduction in the greenhouse gases. As very recently, there was a report that came up and said that if we will be going on at the same pace and emitting the same amount of greenhouse gases in the environment, then instead of even reducing the global temperature by 2%, we will actually increase the global temperature by 3% in totality. So actually, instead of doing anything positive, rather the entire efforts are going on in the negative direction. So as we know that the lockdowns for months, that it was almost a global lockdown. So that time it was a feeling of respite or a feeling of relaxation, that yes, the global temperatures are coming down, or even the greenhouse gases emissions are coming down, the pollution levels came down. But unfortunately, the lockdowns resulted only in a temporary reduction of greenhouse gases, which was approximately 4.2 to 7.5%. And rather, since the time countries have been opening up with their industrial processes and manufacturing hubs, the greenhouse gases and their emission has recorded even the highest levels in the past history. And that is why we are far away from reaching the very idea or the very aim or objective of reducing the global temperature by 2%. Then secondly, the state's action. The current contributions submitted by the member states are radically insufficient to reach the below 2 degree or 1.5 degrees Celsius limit. So as we know that whenever we are trying to tackle a problem that is global in nature, so right, global warming, climate change is not an issue that is faced just by India or just by United States or just by China, United Nations, United Kingdom, France, Canada, etc. Rather, it is a problem which is global, which belongs to every nation. So that is why even the solution has to be such that every nation participates in the solution or bringing the change in the climate action. Now, in such a scenario, it is very much important that every member, now be it a small contributor to the greenhouse gases or be it the large contributors like US, China, and India. So, as we know that United States and China, these are the top two emitters of the greenhouse gases, and India stands on the third number. But there are other countries as well who, have taken up greater responsibility, and they are trying to mitigate the climate change, even though they are not that big a contributor to the global greenhouse gases emission. So that is why it is very much desirable that we stop thinking about the individualistic or just the nationalistic needs and aspirations, and we think it from a global level. And that is why the states or the member states should be they should provide sufficient action to reach this aim of reducing the global temperatures by 2 degrees. So all G7 countries except the United States and 11 of the G20 members have mid-century net zero targets. Now, as we know that like countries like France, Canada, UK, so they've all said that by 2050 they will get a net zero emission of carbon. So yes, the aim is really good, but we need to see that are we or not really equipped to reach these aims and objectives by the mid-century, that is by 2050 or 2060. So now here it has been discussed under three heads that whether or not we are well equipped to reach the net zero targets by 2050 or 2060. So first is the credibility test, the second is the accountability check, and the third is the fairness check. So by credibility, we mean that the updated national contributions should reflect targets and actions in 2030. Now, as we know that see, I'll give you a very small understanding as to what do we mean by the national target or the national contributions. So basically, the member nations that became the part of the Paris Agreement in 2015, they said that they would be giving some national contributions towards this global aim. Now, just we discussed that since this is a global problem, so every member of this globe, every member nation of this world will have to contribute in this direction. Now, in order to contribute, there are some national targets or national contributions which a country promises to fulfill by some given point of time. So basically, the very general date that has been taken is of 2030. But it is also necessary that when we are promising to become a net zero country by 2050, our actions should match our words. When we say we should walk the talk. So when we are saying that by 2050 we'll become net zero emission country, then it should be also seen in our steps that are short term as well as the long term. So there are only a very few nations that have been able to comply or fulfill their national contributions as it had been promised. And also it has been many a times criticized that there is no punishment or penalty, or there is no big answerability that is required if at all you are not able to fulfill these national contributions, and it's just like an obligation. You just have to give the report, and that's it. And that is why the nations many a times take it very easy, and they do not pay a lot of attention in fulfilling their national contributions. But that is another side of the Paris Agreement. So, according to the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, 1.5 degrees Celsius report, the global emissions have to fall by 45% from the 2010 levels by 2030. So, if at all we want to reduce the global temperature by 1.5 degrees Celsius, then from 2010 to 2030, 45% of the global carbon emissions have to be reduced, which mark my words, dear aspirants, it's a very, very big target. And for this, every nation will have to very much, it will have to staunchly contribute in this regard. Then the second is the accountability check. So currently there is no mechanism. Now, just as I was discussing over here, there is no mechanism to review the adequacy of individual contributions. So yes, like for example, India, though India, we should be very proud of it, has been quite better than various nations in fulfilling its national contributions or the national targets which it had promised. But still, we have a long way to go. So, for example, let's take a country. Let's take example for India only. So India promised that we will be taking this, and this step to reduce the global emission by the year, first say 2025. So if at all India is not able to achieve these targets, or if it is not working efficiently to reach these objectives, so there is no any mechanism to review the adequacy of these individual contributions, and even there is no proper body or no proper a discussion that is taken up, that why were you not able to reach these targets or something like that, due to which the countries many times take it very easy and are not very serious about their contributions in this global cause. Then most countries justify their non-action by stating their emissions to be small share of global emissions. Now this is something which is a very negative tendency of all the humans, to say that if at all we are not able to reach any target, we always have excuses for that, right? For example, if you're participating in a race, like in a relay race or something, any kind of a sports event, then if you lose, then you always have something to tell, that I was not feeling well, or my legs were paining, or something like that. So it is a very unfortunate human tendency that we always have excuses for our failures. And same is the tendency that has been taken up by the countries, many countries as well, that if when they're not able to achieve their national contributions or their national goals, so they simply say that we are not at all contributing enough to the global emissions, so it is a very small share of pollution or carbon emission that is coming from our nation. Thus we are not obliged enough to participate with that much of strength as the other countries like US, China and India should. Yes, that is a truth, that larger the contribution in the emission of carbon gases, larger should be the contribution in mitigating the climate change, should be. But still, the countries that have the potential of helping the global climate change in reducing it, they should not shed off their shoulders just by saying that since they do not contribute into polluting the world, so they should not even contribute equally for helping the world as well, because this is just against the humanitarian understanding or humanitarian cause. And thirdly, we have the fairness check. So the spread of goals, 7 commitments across states should be fair and equitable. And just as we said, that it should not be like, see, and let's understand it with a very simple example, that countries like USA that had seen industrialization, US and UK also, the countries that had seen industrialization even like hundreds of years ago, before industrialization could enter into the other nations, like we can take the African nations and other small islands, and even if we take example of India as well. So obviously, because they were better at industrialization, so they had a better chance of exploiting the resources given by this Mother Earth. So now in such a scenario, they have been emitting the carbon since a very long period of time. So obviously, they are in a greater responsibility to mitigate the carbon emission as compared to the poorer or underdeveloped nations, or even the developing nations that still have their chance and their share to be used by the earth, or the resources which are there given by the earth. So that is why the responsibility should be distributed equitably, and the burden which is there on a highly developed nation should not be equal to the burden which is there on an underdeveloped nation. So it should be depending upon the capacity of these individual nations as well. With this, let's discuss the second article for the day, which talks about the wildlife species voluntary declaration. So recently, the Supreme Court has upheld Allahabad High Court order granting immunity from investigation and prosecution if one declared illegal acquisition or possession of exotic wildlife species. Now, this is the very essence of this article. Basically, it is an order which has now been upheld by the Supreme Court as well. So it has said that if a person, for example, there is a person, XYZ person, so he was in possession, or he had with himself any of the exotic species, the trade of which, the buying and selling of which is prohibited by the government or the sites which we will learn about it. It's an international, international body that actually tries to curb down the illegitimate or illicit or illegal trade of the exotic species or the endangered species in the world. But since this court judgment will actually help these people who have illegally acquired these species, that if at all you will tell the government honestly about like what species do you have, how many species do you have, then where have you kept them, and you will give the entire information. That is what we talk about declaring, wherein you tell voluntarily to the government that these are the species, or this is the animal that I'm in the possession of. So even if that possession was illegal, still, if you honestly declare or tell the government about it, you will be given immunity from any kind of investigation or prosecution. And that is how it is actually in a way incentivizing these people who are in possession of illegal or exotic wildlife species. So this is the very idea of behind the saving themselves from investigation and prosecution. But now we need to understand that why at all the government has taken this step, or the Supreme Court has upheld this decision. So basically, the one-time voluntary disclosure scheme so you should remember it is coming from Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So it is for now it's only an advisory and it's not a law. So we should know that too. So it covers all the species under appendices 1, 2, and 3 of CITES, under which there are 5,950 species. So basically, CITES is the Convention for the International Trade for the Endangered Species. So it actually tries to stop any kind of illegal trade which takes place of the endangered species through the international borders. So the disclosure through Parivesh portal. So there is this portal coming from the Ministry of Forest and Climate Change and Environment, Parivesh. So over there you have to register your possession. So the very reason why this step has been taken by the government is that it will actually help the government to understand and to find out the facts as to how many zoonotic animals, zoonotic species or the exotic species are prevailing or are under the possession of the people, which will ultimately help the government to curb down any kind of zoonotic diseases, just like the disease of COVID-19 also. Basically, zoonotic diseases are the diseases which come from animals and get transmitted to humans. So just like COVID-19, SARS, MERS, etc. So this actually will give a government a better understanding, and in this way, the government will be able to curb down any kind of spread of zoonotic diseases in the coming future. So the illegal trade of exotic animals in India. So this is a report coming from the Directorate of Revenue Intelligence 2019-20, which actually frames the rules for anti-smuggling and stuff like related stuff. So India has emerged as a big demand center for exotic birds and animals. There are many people who are very fond of keeping exotic birds and animals as their pets. So they're imported through illegal channels from Bangkok, Malaysia, etc., to Kolkata, Chennai, Hyderabad, Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai, and Cochin. So the black, white, ruffed lemur, Hulock gibbon, and palm civet albino monkeys, among others, are the exotic species that are mostly traded illegally for being kept as pets. So as we know, the object is to address the challenge of zoonotic diseases, to develop an inventory, that is a complete list or repository of exotic live species for better compliance under CITES, and regulate their import as well. So this was the CITES, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. So these are the 3 appendices, the 3 lists under which various species are listed. So this was created at 1963 meeting of the IUCN. So this is very important. And now these are the species, 3 appendices. So this appendix 1, 2, and 3, you can definitely have a look at them too. With this, let's see what do we have for news in flash today. So reasons for Indian droughts. So as per a study which has been published in Science, nearly 6 out of the 10 droughts that occurred in non-El Nino years during the Indian summer monsoon season in past century may have been driven by atmospheric disturbances from the North Atlantic region. So basically, this is the entire procedure. We have El Nino and La Nina. These are the 2 phases of the ENSO, which is the El Nino southern oscillations. These are the systems of currents, and the system of basically the temperature changes that take place in the central or the eastern Pacific Ocean. This is a complete entire study related to geography. So basically it has said that it is not just the lack of water or just the lack of Indian monsoon, rather 6 out of 10 of the droughts might have occurred during the Indian summer due to the atmospheric disturbances from the North Atlantic region. So the study was led by researchers at the Center for Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. So this is a very important news. The second one, PM Vani. The cabinet has recently approved PM Vani, which stands for Wi-Fi Access Network Interface. Wi-Fi Access Network Interface. aimed to bridge the digital divide which is there in India using wireless technologies. So it will allow setting up of broadband services across the country in public data offices. So this will actually help the people to connect very easily with the government offices and with each other through Wi-Fi. So it was first recommended by TRAI, which is the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India in 2017, and now it has been approved by the cabinet. So PM Vani, what is it? The full form of it and the very aim of it should be kept in your mind. So this was all for today. We hope it was a good session for you. Thank you so much for staying tuned with LawSikho.